Alrighty, so this is the time looping fic. We've gone through a bunch of stuff happened. This is chapter 11. Kanaya Miriam, fourth cycle, the afternoon before the phone calls. So last time we had everything kind of really gone to shit. Rose is dead in this time now. Everything's kind of horrible. This contains a trigger warning for a major character death. We're pretty much in the same emotional territory as the last time. So, yeah, it's it's the worst part of the story, like emotionally speaking. So here we are. Kanaya was always hungry now. For a month now, she'd fought against the urge to drink. She had fought so hard, but she knew it was a fight she was destined to lose. She tried animals in the forest, but the effect wasn't the same. Part of her knew deep inside that was probably all in her head. She never had this problem before. Before before Rose changed. Before Rose died. Why can't I hear you anymore? Why aren't you telling me how to fix this? She kept trying to reach out, but every time she called, she never knew what to say. Terezi, Carcat, June, all of her friends. They'd been there for her when Rose had turned back to drinking and hit her, but then she was gone. Kanaya wasn't really there anymore. Terezi had been standing in the field where Kanaya watched her for a while now. Oh, am I? Oh, no, I'm in the right one. Um, she often took walks to clear her head. Kanaya knew this because she'd been watching her for several days now. Despite Terezi's keen hearing and sense of smell, Kanaya knew how to hide herself. Amazing what the rainbow drinkers were capable of when they truly let themselves become immersed in their abilities. It was almost like Terezi was out there waiting for someone. That didn't really make any sense, but it was a thought that Kanaya kept having. After a while, Terezi walked off toward the woods. Kanaya knew she had built a copy of her treehouse nearby. She wasn't supposed to know about it, but she did. Once Terezi left, Kanaya sat with her thoughts in silence. I wish you would say something. I don't even know what you are, but I'm so lonely. Rose was. She mattered so much to me. I thought we were helping to keep each other on track. I suppose I was wrong about that. Wrong about so many things, so many times. Kanaya was crying. She pulled out her battered phone and selected Terezi's number from the contacts. The call went straight to voicemail. Kanaya couldn't bring herself to say anything. She just sat there crying into the phone, sobbing like a helpless wriggler who had lost her lucis. The voicemail ended automatically when the time ran out, and Kanaya put the phone away, her entire body feeling numb. So hungry, so tired, so lonely. Kanaya lay down on the warm grass and closed her eyes. There's a striking connection between the idea of the narrative and the idea of linear time in life. After all, the narrative is born out of the desire to recreate life's patterns and nuances. That is one of the core conceits of all storytelling. But unlike a story, we can't keep going back and rewriting the narrative of our lives. We can't just keep trying again and again to see whether a subtle change will have a good impact or a bad one. I feel like doing that would lead to disastrous results. If you pull away a single leg, the table wobbles. Maybe some of the things on top fall off. If you pull away another leg, the table falls. Everything comes crashing off of it. After that, you're really just picking it apart for scrap. The damage has already been done, and it becomes gratuitous. It was dark when Kanaya awoke, and it was cold. The wind had changed and brought with it an unseasonal chill. The hunger was still there. If anything, it was worse than before, clouding her mind, making her thoughts dark. It was a few minutes before she realized that she'd been walking the path into the forest, heading towards Terezi's treehouse, the treehouse that only a few people knew about, the isolated, hard to find treehouse, except it wasn't all that hard to find when you'd followed its owner there a few times. In fact, it was quite easy to locate. Nestled in the trees, it looked like a perfect replica of Terezi's old hive from Alternia, and she was inside, crying. Kanaya could definitely hear crying from inside. For a moment, Kanaya paused at the base of the ladder. Are you there yet? Are you planning to stop me? To beg with me to reconsider? To talk about how this all happened before, which is quite convenient, seeing as none of us can remember. She climbed the ladder swiftly and silently, hoisting herself into a low crouch inside Terezi's treehouse. The troll sat in a corner. She was cradling a small, stuffed red dragon and sobbing softly to herself. I know why you're here. Her voice was so far away, so incredibly hollow. I know what you've been doing, watching me. Kanaya felt herself starting to growl. It's fine. She wasn't there. Frisk was supposed to be there, I think, but something went wrong. So many things have gone horribly wrong. Why not one more in the pile? Her vision was starting to blur and darken. It's fine. Do what you have to do. I don't care anymore. She hugged the dragon plush, leaning forward, and whispered softly, I love you, Vriss. Sorry I couldn't tell you. Kanaya's world went black. Do you need the aftermath described to you? The blood and viscera, the overwhelming smell of the place, the way the teals splattered throughout the small treehouse, the marred chalk drawing of two young trolls holding hands that was on the wall? Do you really need to have that picture painted so vividly in your mind? Or do you need to hear the way that Kanaya screamed when she came to and realized what she'd done? Will that help you process what you're witnessing? Will it help you to understand the grand scheme of things, the plan of the world? Or do you just need to accept things the way they are? That the world is simply as it is, the sum of all our decisions that ever were and ever will be, a linear illusion created by chemicals in our brains, a prison without escape, without hope. Chapter 12, Vriska Circuit, the other place. That's bullshit, Vriska said to me, resuming a familiar. Oh no, I'm sorry. Started too late. That was good. Keep that emotional impact. No, you can't do this. You can't make me watch this. I already played this fucking game. I'm not making you do anything. That's bullshit, Vriska said to me, resuming a familiar style of narrative interjection. I was only too happy to comply. In truth, I had grown somewhat fond of her rough company over our previous interactions. I wouldn't necessarily admit to it, but for fear of boosting her ego to the point of breaking, but I found her somewhat charming, in a brusque kind of way. I assure you that I am not joking or making fun, nor am I lying to you, I said in calmly but plainly. She didn't mean to be the coddler, not now. But you are the one in control of this particular narrative. I'm merely an observer, a passenger, to use a vehicular metaphor I once used. Briscoe was crumpled up on the ground, and had I not been a disembodied narrative device, I would have been sorely tempted to give her a big hug. She looked like she could use one right now. Although, in light of her latest visions, maybe that would have been inappropriate. I don't understand this. Briscoe balled up a fist and slammed it into where the ground would be. She was once again in a featureless kind of plane. I think her mind felt more comfortable like this at the moment. I could understand why she didn't want to conjure up the treehouse again. We had a plan. At the very least, to help Kanaya deal with losing Rose. But I feel like I already went through the versions of this where Rose was fine. But every single time, things just kept getting worse and worse. More and more people get hurt because of me. I waited a moment to give her a chance to finish before I spoke. Perhaps have you considered why all this keeps happening? Why your decisions ultimately lead you back to the exact same place? Vriska shook her head. I already knew she had not. What was the decision you made? I never actually asked. I decided to stay with Rezi and make up for all the bad shit I did in the past. And how were you planning on doing that exactly?
Vriska shrugged. She looked utterly defeated.
I don't know, by helping them. However, just doing stuff they needed done and not being an asshole anymore. Being considerate and shit.
It was times like these I wished I had a proper head so I could nod sagely, but I settled on a nice instead. Perhaps, I said, you need some additional perspective if you don't mind. I'm going to break format here. It's easier this way. You see, Earthsea is what we like to call a post scarcity society. None of you want for anything physically. Alchemy and advanced science ensure that you have more than enough for the people. You've mastered interstellar travel. Several of you have the powers of actual gods. Of your little group, the only one who isn't literally immortal is Karkat, and I'm sure you'll figure out some way to extend his already impressive troll lifespan, just in case 1,000 years of Karkat isn't enough.
I think Dave would probably appreciate that.
I know, it was a joke. In any case, the thing that matters most in such a society is self actualization, the ability to realize one's potential as a person and live up to it fully, whether that involves creating art or serving others or simply loving one's family. The individual is the one who determines what best fits criteria.
So?
So I believe that you're still looking at it from the position of filling the physical needs of others, helping to keep them safe and protect them, providing for them, fight the bad guys for them. But none of your friends need that from you.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Several of your still living friends, and I mean living in the post Lord English timeline sense, not the whatever the hell you're doing right now timeline sense, are ones you share extensive emotional baggage with. And yet, every time you repeat this cycle, your approach is to basically tell Terezi most of what happened here, tell the rest some of what happened here, and then your whole plan falls apart. That's when the cycle starts again, and all the subtle things you altered along the way become massive issues. Are you really so dense that you can't see it? You and your friends all need each other. You don't need to do everything all by yourself. Self reliance is great, but when taken to the extreme, it becomes toxic and harmful. It pushes you away from others instead of building meaningful communities and relationships. And you, Vriska Surkhet, are just about the worst when it comes to this.
Oh, fuck you.
She broke back to what was clearly a more normal, comfortable styled speaking for her.
What do you want?
I know how you can break the cycle. That got her attention.
No, I don't believe you. Everyone was saying that voice they heard, assuming that was you, didn't seem the faintest clue what was going on.
That was an issue of narrative juxtaposition and framework. When we're here, I have significant control and perceptive abilities. Back in your real world, I generally can only communicate on a basic level and offer vague advice.
I still don't believe you.
Think of it this way. What do you have to lose? Vriska was silent. Vriska was silent for a long time, her eyes closed and her mind lost in thought.
Fine. I obviously haven't been making the right decisions here, so help me figure this out.
So I did. Chapter 13.
Kanaya Miriam, first cycle. Sometime in the mid-morning the day before the phone calls that might still happen. So now we've looped back to the very beginning. Rose was out. Kanaya was alone. The house was quiet and peaceful. For the first time in a couple of days, she had the chance to be alone with her sewing. A matching set of suits for her and Rose, and it was an ambitious project. Kanaya was thrilled. She had nothing to do but take her carefully laid out patterns and slowly convert them into beautiful finished garments. She'd started the project a year ago, but had never had time to do much more than start the suit top for Rose. Now she had all the measurements and patterns set. She intended to make quick work of this. Kanaya was no longer alone. The air shifted, and she knew that someone was in the room with her. She turned slowly, readying herself to strike at a moment's notice. She turned, and her eyes grew wide. Vriska? The troll stood before her, looking identical to the day she'd disappeared. Her clothes were unmarred by time or damage, and there were no signs of injuries on her. She hadn't physically aged, Not that she would have anyway, given her god tier status, but she looked so very much older. Older than Kanaya thought possible. Hi, Kanaya. The voice coming from Briska sounded so distant and small. Kanaya had a hard time believing that this wasn't just some kind of waking dream. Is that really you? Am I perhaps hallucinating? I did stay up later than normal working on this project, and perhaps I am suffering the effects of sleep deprivation. Briska smiled in spite of herself, a small smile, but a genuine one. Yeah, it's me. We need to talk, and there's not a ton of time to do it. Kanaya ran to the other end of her sewing room and grabbed a small stool for Vriska to sit on. Motioning her into it, Kanaya sat down across from Vriska and frowned. I must admit to a large degree of confusion. I do not understand why you are here, or what you mean by all this. Unexpectedly, Vriska reached both of her hands out towards Kanaya's. Reluctantly, Kanaya held out her own, and Vriska held her in a way that was surprisingly tender. In spite of herself, Kanaya found herself blushing a little. I was cruel to you, back in Alternia. Kanaya blinked and said nothing. This wasn't what she was expecting. I, I, I knew how you felt about me. I knew you were flesh for me. Now, fuck that Alternian bullshit. I knew you were in love with me in one way or another. Vriska looked supremely uncomfortable. Kanaya bowed her head a little. Yes, what you are saying right now is true. I had very much of what Rose might have called a crush on you. I was also a little bit afraid of you. I knew you felt something like that, and I took advantage of it. I messed around with you and Tavros in a way that was disgusting. I abused our relationships in order to do what I wanted, and I didn't care about what you felt. Her breathing was becoming heavy, and Kanaya felt her squeezing harder on her palms. I, I can't say anything to Tavros anymore. Wherever he is, it's not a place I can go right now. Believe me, while I was in the other place, I tried so many times. The last thing made no sense to Kanaya, but she decided not to press the issue. But I can say something to you. And I treated you horribly too. I had more than a little bit of a crush on you too, I think. And I played around with those feelings and I made you hurt. Kanaya looked straight at Vriska. Yes, you did. Vriska was tearing up and looked down quickly. But, Kanaya said quietly, I also think that maybe you were dealing with some issues that you did not fully address. Those may not be excuses for your behavior, but I do believe they are factors worth considering with regards to your desire to make amends for your actions. I assume that this is what you desire to do, yes? Vriska nodded. Yeah, but also, I don't know. I want to do more than just make up for the shit I did that was bad. I also wanted to help, be a part of the community. It still sounded weird to her, but the idea made sense. Now, this was the part she was going to sound crazy. She had one of these for each person she had to visit, and she was very much not looking forward to having to do this several times. I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm going to say. Try not to forget anything. I can't tell you how I know this or how important it is, but I need you to trust me. Kanaya furrowed her brow, but she didn't interrupt. Brisket took a deep breath. Rose is having the dreams again. More than normal. She's not doing okay. She's seriously thinking about drinking again. Kanaya moved to speak, but Briska shook her head sharply. Don't let her start. You're the auspicious here, so I'll leave the specifics up to your judgment. But don't let her close off from you, and don't let her start drinking again. She took another breath and stared directly into Kanaya's eyes. If you start feeling the urge to drink yourself, tell Rose immediately. Kanaya laughed. Human alcohol has never been. Briska shot her a look that said, Shut the fuck up. So she did. You know damn well I don't mean alcohol. I would imagine there are various ways to deal with your darker nature without harming anyone. Am I correct? Kanaya shrugged. There were theories about that. Some had talked about relationships where the act was consensual. Perhaps. There are ways to feed without killing the host. It takes discipline, and both parties need to address certain issues. Fuck it, I don't care. You want to get kinky with your wife to keep from turning into a fucking monster? Go for it. I'm the last person to judge you. Just however you deal with it, talk to Rose and be safe. Don't let your condition get out of hand, or you will fucking kill someone. I would never. She looked at Vriska. The look in her eyes, she couldn't quite place it. but it looked haunted. Kanaya, given the right circumstances, everyone breaks. I called you my friend once. I'd love to do that again. Please don't try to walk this path by yourself. It won't end well. Trust me. There was silence then. Kanaya and Vriska looked at each other, and Kanaya found herself turning the words over in her mind. Was there anything else? She asked, her voice quite low now. Yeah, actually. Vriska stood up and stretched, her back popping lightly. I'm sorry about how I led you on back then. I actually really kind of wanted to be like your girlfriend, but I don't think it would have been good for either of us. I was such a bitch, and Rose is really good for you. Briscoe laughed. Consider your relationship personally blessed by me, descendant of Marquis Spinneret Mindfang herself. Briscoe winked. Anyway, Fussy Fangs, I gotta make some more stops before this thing is through. Her face turned serious. Don't forget what I said. You and Rose can support each other. Neither of you. You don't have to be alone if you don't want to. Before Kanaya had a chance to respond, she was alone in the room again. But still, there was a lingering warmth and a familiar scent. It had really happened. Oh. Yeah. Now we get to the over the theme of everything. Oh. Take a drink here. Yeah, this is the point I was trying to make with this whole thing. Is basically, you don't have to handle everything by yourself, and if you do, it can fuck things up. Chapter 14, June Egbert, first cycle, slightly earlier that morning. If there was one thing that Earthsea had a lot of, it was open space. Sometimes June liked to get up really early in the morning and just run and fly around in the open fields near her house. In fact, she was doing just that right now. No one was around, and she could just kick off her shoes and run barefoot through the grass. It really was an amazing feeling, a time she felt most like herself. Until she almost ran into Vriska Circuit, who was unexpectedly standing in front of her. June shouted and dropped back. Vriska, what the hell? She saw Vriska almost burst out laughing. Hey, June. June fell to the ground in the middle of the grass, but then she couldn't stay mad. She jumped up, ran over to Vriska, and gave her a big hug. Oh my God, I missed you so much. When you went into the black hole and didn't come out again, I thought you were dead. Trezzy missed you most of all. Vriska hugged June back, then pushed back and sat down on the grass herself. June plopped down next to her, grinning. Suddenly, June's expression changed. She'd forgotten to tell Vriska. Oh, crap, I forgot. Vriska, wait a minute. How do you know my name and all that? Vriska was looking like she was thinking some pretty big thoughts. June, I've been away for a long time in a place I couldn't understand. But while I was over there, there were still things I found out about this world. And I kept coming back here over and over again. And every time I would come back here, I'd forget a piece of what I needed to know. Can we just talk for a little bit? It's nice out here. June grinned. Sure. What do you want to talk about? How much Con Air actually kind of sucks? I'm kidding. We can talk about other movies or games or something. Do you know the Carapacians actually invented an old Atari 2600? No, June, like Feelings Jam. June furrowed her eyebrows and nodded seriously. Oh, okay, sure, we can do that. Sorry, I just get really excited. I know. Vriska took a second to collect her thoughts. So, I feel we left things in kind of a weird place when we left. The whole thing with dating you or the alternate you, and all this stuff about bringing me back and everything. And then what happened after the retcon, I feel like we never really got the chance to talk all that through, you know? Vriska looked like she was really trying to think this over, but she also didn't look like she was sure what to say. She was in luck. June Egbert had been thinking about these very topics for years. Hey, Vriska, so I was kind of going through a lot of stuff a few years back when I started coming out as trans. That's the human word for. I know, Vriska responded quietly. I am too. I mean, trans. I never told you. June couldn't help herself from grinning. She leaned over and hugged Vriska again. Oh my God, that's great! After a minute of hugging Vriska and muttering happily, June sat back and collected herself, trying very hard to look serious and conceal the fact that she was absolutely giddy to have her friend back.
So yeah, when I was coming out, I did a lot of thinking about myself, a lot of thinking about my past, and you came up a lot. And I think I realized something. I think maybe I was kind of in love with you once, or at least had a crush on you.
Vriska took a sharp breath.
But I think it's better we didn't end up together or anything. I remember what you said about us dating in the dream bubble, and that sounded real fun, but it also sounded like we were both kind of lonely.
June looked closely at Vriska. She didn't look like this thought had occurred to her before. June, Vriska was speaking so quietly that June had to lean in to hear. I think you might be right about that.
Right?
June smiled.
I think we were both lonely, and we were friends anyway, so we decided to try out dating and all that. But I don't think we worked well for that. But you're still one of my best friends.
Vriska kind of pursed her lips and made a little smacking noise with her mouth.
Yeah, fuck it. I think you're exactly right. We're good friends. Maybe not so great at being girlfriends.
June stuck out her hand, pretending to be a distinguished gentleman of old English stock. Vriska grinned and stuck out her own hand the same way. They shook.
I say, my good chap, June started, let us be the best of friends. I say, my good fellow, Vriska responded. That is a capital idea, most capital.
The two of them started laughing, leaned in, hugged each other tightly, then fell back onto the grass as they laughed. After a while, they subsided into a quiet silence as they lay in the dewy grass and listened to the birds in the distance.
Hey, June, there was something else I needed to tell you. It might sound kind of weird, but it's super important.
June shrugged. There was basically nothing Vriska could tell her that would be weirder than most of the stuff she'd already seen.
I know you're living with Callie and Roxy now. Talk to Callie and ask them if they've been hearing any kind of voice interjecting into their thoughts. I'm going to talk to them next, but I need you to mention this specifically. It needs to come from you. Also, please look in on Rose. I've talked to Kanaya about her. Well, I will in a couple hours. Long story. But she's struggling with some stuff she's not talking about. And she's going to need support. Have Roxy check in on her too. Roxy's really good for her. All of you can keep her where she needs to be, just like she'd help any of you.
That all sounded reasonable to June. She wasn't the type to just let her friends slip under the waves without at least trying to help them back.
Yeah, sure, Vriska. We'll help Rose out. Kanaya too. She's dealing with some stuff I feel might involve a more intimate solution in the long run. But if she starts looking worn or like she's losing her usual fussy fangs attitude, then figure out what's wrong and help her out.
June reached over and put a hand on Vriska's shoulder.
Hey, sure. I'll make sure everyone keeps everyone else good. And Vriska? Thanks for trusting me enough to come out to me. That's a big deal to me. Anytime. I care a lot about you, June Egbert. Just wish I'd said it earlier, you know? It's fine. You said it now.
She heard Vriska laugh.
Yeah. I gotta go now, June. I'm really sorry. If everything else goes well, I'll see you again soon. Can't fuck this one up, you know?
June turned to respond, but Vriska's already gone. There was a large Vriska-shaped impression in the still wet grass. And it really happened. All right. They are such goddamn dorks. I like their relationship as a friendship. When I first read Homestuck, I was like a hardcore Spider Breath shipper. And I was really trying to find content for that, which is in 2019, 2020 is not as easy as I thought it would be. But then the more I thought about it, the less they worked as like a couple. I don't know. They seem like they get on each other's nerves as a couple, but as friends, they're like really good. So that's where I came down on that, at least in how I wrote Vriska and how I wrote June. So I really enjoyed that as a friendship. Chapter 15, Callie, first cycle, shortly thereafter. June was out doing her windy running thing. Roxy was kind of a night owl and would stay asleep until late morning. Callie had a chance to sit down in their study and write. They had recently been introduced to the world of wizard fiction by Rose and wanted very much to try their own hand at it. In fact, they might have suggested a friendly wizard fiction competition between the two.
They knew for a fact that Rose had already started her piece, so Callie knew that they had little time to waste.
Trollfo strode into the atrium of the College of the Learned, wand grasped tightly in his hand. He still had the scars where Malvium's ward blast had hit him all those years ago, but he was no longer the small boy wizard he had once been. In fact, he'd grown to be one of the most powerful.
Callie stopped. Someone else was in the house.
Vriska.
Callie didn't even bother to turn. They'd been expecting this.
I thought you wouldn't show up until later.
I had to do this now. I need to speak to you alone. Roxy will be waking up soon, and I still need to make one more stop at a pretty specific time.
Okay, that makes sense. I won't offer you tea then. Not out of rudeness, of course, but because you're on a very strict timeline, right?
Callie saved the document on their computer and turned to look over at Vriska. They basically knew what to expect from what they'd been told earlier. Not that anyone would believe it, but it was still the truth. Vriska narrowed her eyes. You knew I was coming. You have been hearing that voice. Callie nodded. There was no point in lying. Strangely, Vriska looked immensely relieved to hear this. Oh, thank fuck. I was hoping I wasn't going to have to explain this all again. I had other stuff I needed to talk to you about anyway, and I already told June to talk to you about the voice in your head bullshit. Listen to her, by the way. She fucking loves you. Callie, her and Roxy, lucky bitch. Callie grinned a bit at the last bit, but they did appreciate the sentiment all the same.
What else did you want to talk about?
Vriska grinned. Writing, of course. Well, fiction in general, I think. Or stories. Fuck, let me just ask you some questions. Callie motioned to a nearby table and waited for Vriska to take a seat. They sat down across from her.
What did you have in mind?
Not to get all weirdly meta on you or any of that shit, but do you ever wonder if we're all just characters in each other's stories? Like, do the things we think and do actually matter at all? Callie tented their fingers and looked at Vriska.
I don't think the question matters.
Vriska looked confused, so Callie continued.
Look, I love arguing about philosophy and fiction and metaphysical stuff, but at the end of the day, who cares? If we're there to support each other and help each other up when we fall, then the question of who's writing our narratives doesn't matter.
Why? Vriska still looked confused.
Because we all are. Writing our own stories, influencing the stories of others, collaborating and revising, rewriting, all of that. If one person tries to take too much of that, either out of a sense of control or a sense of responsibility for others, that's when bad things start to happen.
Callie was studying Vriska's face as they spoke.
That voice I've been hearing, it has to do with what happened to you in the black hole, doesn't it?
Vriska nodded.
And when you leave and finish whatever it is you have to do, I'm not going to hear it anymore.
Vriska shrugged. I hope so, but honestly, I'm not sure.
Good enough. For what it's worth, Vriska, I don't think you're a bad person. I think you did some truly horrible things, but I also believe that you're genuinely trying to make things right in your heart.
Oh, I might have screwed that up pretty badly before. I think I kept trying to find ways to fix everything myself. I feel so shitty for how I messed things up. I wanted to make up for it. Callie smiled at Vriska. They were glad she seemed to be coming around on this.
I understand you've had a long time to reflect. It's natural that you want to take this burden on yourself, an act of contrition and penance. But penance isn't always strictly necessary. Sometimes it's better to simply come back as a better person. Put all the fire irons away and take it as best you can. I don't know what I was trying to say in that paragraph. Yeah, I've been getting the feeling that I was being kind of a shit about that before, even after everything. I'm sure you had good intentions, but those are often overvalued. Personally, I prefer when folks are more deliberate and considerate and less hot-headed.
Vriska was fidgeting uncomfortably in her chair at that comment. Callie extended their hand to Vriska, who reached out and grasped it lightly.
We've all lived so many lives. We've crammed decades or centuries of life into 20 years or so. Do you think that's going to happen without any negative consequences at all?
Do you think all this looping and doubling back and retconning is just going to slide by without leaving some scars?
Vriska stared at them.
We are all broken people, Vriska, not just you. You can either try to act like a martyr and destroy yourself, or you can join the rest of us and have some chance at being whole for the first time in your life.
Callie shrugged as they finished and smiled, a gesture that was equal parts sweetness and sadness. Vriska stared. Vriska stared. Vriska smiled. Without another word, Vriska vanished. Callie, their writing momentarily forgotten, sat alone in their study and waited for what would come next. They didn't need a reminder that this had really happened. They had been expecting it all along. All right. And now we are on to the final main chapter, and then there's like 4 little epilogue chapters, which will go by really quick. Here we have chapter 16, Vriska Circuit, first cycle, the afternoon before the phone calls that might still happen. Vriska had never been more terrified in her life of having to do something. Playing the game, facing off against Bec Noir, the Condense, Lord English. She never really felt all that scared of what she had to do. She supposed it was probably an unhealthy dose of overconfidence on her part. But she was genuinely scared of having to have this conversation with Terezi again. Not because she thought it might go badly, but because the loop might start all over again. Or even worse, the loop was broken, but it would still lead to the same bad outcomes. It had seemed so simple in that other place. The idea of just making a decision and moving forward. Turned out that life was a little bit more complex than that. There's a difference between theory and practice, and that difference is vast and wide. There was no voice to help guide her. The other place seemed to be mostly closed off. She was blinking between where she needed to go, but it seemed like the course had already been set and she was just following it now. Besides, this was the last stop on the line. She'd definitely been through this before, more times than she wanted to count. But it still hurt her heart to see Terezi standing in the middle of the field like that. This time she didn't drop in so close to her. It was probably better this way. It gave Vriska a chance to get her nerves in order. She walked closer. Terezi turned. Suddenly. Vriska? Vriska froze in place. Terezi's face broke out into a massive grin, and she was running. She took the last few feet in a leap and was in Vriska's arms. This was not what Vriska had been expecting.
Briz, I can't believe it. I missed you so much. I thought I was never going to see you again.
Yeah, she was definitely crying. Not delicately either. Tears were just streaming down her cheeks. She buried her face against Vriska's shoulder.
I thought I'd never get to tell you I love you, Vriska.
Definitely not what she'd been expecting.
Come on, let's go.
Terezi jumped out of Vriska's arms and grinned even wider, if that was even possible.
I've got a place nearby we can go that's awesome, and you'll love it.
Vriska didn't want to do this part, but she knew she had to. I know, it's your treehouse, but Jade made a copy of it. There's a couple things that are different, though. You drew a picture of us holding hands. Vriska shuddered briefly as a memory of another version of these events played over her mind. A version where the picture was splattered in teal.
A picture you drew because I'm amazing and you're a dork. And maybe we're both actually really in love with each other and too stupid to tell each other before now.
Vriska started to respond. Terezi started to respond, but Vriska put up a finger.
And I'd love to go to your treehouse and sleep in the blanket pile or whatever, but we can't do that right now. Let's sit.
Together they sat on the warm grass. Vriska reached out and took both of Terezi's hands in hers.
So I kind of had a lot of time to think about stuff. About, well, basically everything. But also, shit. I thought about us a lot.
Terezi was smiling. That was a good sign.
We kept ending up in these fucked up cycles. Violence leading to more violence and shit like that.
Terezi winced at that. No doubt this was bringing up some painful memories on both ends of the whole violence thing.
But,
She couldn't believe she was about to channel some of the shit she learned from the other place. If that asshole was still seeing this, she hoped that fucker was good and proud. I think maybe we did the same thing with each other, like a cycle of loving each other and then that flared out. Trezzy wasn't smiling anymore. Vriska tried to smile herself and squeezed Rezzy's hands. Shit, I'm not breaking up with you or anything, dumbass. Trezzy looked shocked, but then grinned. Oh no, I'm pretty amazing. That would be hard to believe. Yep, that was the person she was in love with, all right. But also, I've been through this a bunch of times. I kept coming back to this same place at this same time, and we hugged and kissed and made love confessions and hung out together and then told everyone else what was happening. Except it always ended up making things worse. Every time it cycled again, things got a little bit worse. And then finally, I wasn't able to show up here, and you went back alone, and Vriska looked down and squeezed Rezzy's hands hard. You died. And I think I maybe fucking lost it a little bit. But then I realized something. She took a deep breath. She'd had lots of time in the other place, but this kind of honesty still felt brand new. I think maybe part of the problem is I just thought we could just kind of love each other a whole lot and everything else would just slot into place. But then I talked to everyone else and really saw what they were going through. How Rose and Kanaya support each other, how Callie and June and Roxy all complement each other's weirdness. Even how Dave and Karkat seem so weirdly at peace with each other's bullshit all the fucking time. So I figure that it's because they're all working to support each other, not just love each other. And why the hell was this making her blush so much? This was hoofy shit. I figure maybe we could do that with each other, support each other and shit, and go on dates and stuff. Maybe move in together at some point, just to try it out and see, if you want to. Vriska ended with a kind of pff noise and frowned. This was silly. Except that Trezzy wasn't laughing or frowning or making fun of her. Instead, she was grinning from ear to ear and her face was completely flushed. She gathered herself up and adopted a serious face, raising her eyebrows and wiggling her nose a bit. Council is willing to accept opposing council's proposal on one condition. What? Trezzy leaned in and kissed Vriska on the lips. Vriska closed her eyes and leaned into it, letting herself fall back into the grass. All around them was the sound of the world. The wind rushed through the trees, and the birds chirped here and there as they flew about their daily business. But there was no voice from the other place, no commentary on their lives or ominous foreshadowing of horrors to come. I feel like they all deserve good things, generally speaking. And I'd like to think that for once, they were able to help each other achieve those things. We've never been through this before. From here on out, their decisions are entirely up to them. All right. Okay, and now we're going to the little sort of epilogue chapters, which are all real short. Chapter 17, A Letter from Kanaya Merriam, a year after the phone calls definitely did not happen.
Rose, I'm writing this letter because I think you will appreciate it more while you are away on your trip than if I were to just write you a text. It is absolutely the kind of thing that I feel you would greatly enjoy. Also, I am very much enjoying writing it. While you are doing important things with the Carapacian government, other somewhat less important but still important things have been happening back at home. Did you know that Vriska and Terezi are talking about getting married? I did not entirely believe it at first. In fact, I very much thought it was one of their jokes. I thought for quite a while they were just extending their commitment to their bit by considerably more than usual. Except that Terezi asked me to make her a suit, and then Vriska asked me to make her a dress. They seemed very taken with the idea of a wedding in particular after Vriska looked at the photos from our own wedding. So that is perhaps a thing that will be happening soon. If it does, I hope that you can attend. It would be very fun, I think. I hope that Callie, June, and Roxy are all taking good care of you. I can think of no better group of people to ensure that the Carapacians achieve their goals of self-governance. It fills me with such pride to see the people I care so deeply about doing such great things. Regarding certain other matters, I am pleased to tell you that I have not had the urge to drink since you have left. Our particular way of dealing with the issue has been quite effective. Dare I say, I am actually quite thrilled with the way things have worked out. I miss you, and I am very much looking forward to further exploring this when you return. I would say the prospect is quite exciting. I am blushing as I write this because of the suggestive nature of what I am writing. I feel it is important to fully appreciate this. I will refrain from talking more about that until you come back. Rest assured that I love you very much, and you are never far from my thoughts, both private and less so. Imagine an awkward wink or similar emotive gesture here, for effect. Your love, Kanaya. P.S. I hope you enjoy the suit.
Chapter 18. A letter from Rose Lalonde. A response penned 2 days later.
Darling Kanaya, I do enjoy the written page as much as a means of talking to you. I feel like it allows me to fully stretch my legs of communication in a way that a cramped screen simply doesn't allow. There's a kind of expressiveness that is unparalleled, which is to say that I love your idea, so I'm writing you back. The Carpathians have been welcoming hosts in their new capital. While I am somewhat sad to see so many of our old friends moving from Kendown proper, I am overjoyed that they have found such renewed purpose in their many public works projects. Not only have June, Roxy, and Callie been instrumental in helping to plan out their new country, Jade has been helping them with physical construction. Dave and Carcat keep showing up in their ridiculous car to offer random pieces of advice like a couple of old men. They're such weirdos, and I'm glad they found each other, because I doubt very much that anyone else could stand them. Imagine a nice big wink here. I'm not being serious. If Vriska and Terezi decide to hold a wedding, I will absolutely have to attend. There is simply no other possible option than for me to attend. Also, you will have to attend as well. We will both have to attend, and we will both have to be dressed impeccably, so as not to disappoint the masses who follow our every move. Dearest Kanaya, if you happen to be working on any more projects for just such an occasion, I would be forever grateful, and would repay my gratitude in whatever manner you saw fit. Imagine another wink here, maybe a bit of a suggestive one. On a serious note, I haven't had any dreams lately. If I do, I will call you right away. I also haven't had the urge to drink at all, which is hugely reassuring. I didn't forget what you said, and will get somewhere safe with June if I can't deal with something on my own. Also, I know I can call you at any time without judgment. I don't know how to tell you how much that means to me. With regards to the more risque part of your letter, I am outraged that you would make such suggestions. I am but a delicate flower, hence my name, and would never be so base as to indulge in certain vampire-related fantasies on a regular basis with an extremely attractive woman who I also happen to be married to. I would never suggest that the fact that it both benefits her greatly and brings us both immense pleasure is an extremely happy set of circumstances. These are things I would never say, because I am a pure and delicate flower who would never entertain such thoughts. You will have to imagine both the giant wink and shit-eating grin I have on my face right now. Sorry. Rest assured that I love you just as much as you love me, and I believe that our thoughts are very much identical in many respects. I blew you a kiss. With love and affection from your wife, Rose. P.S. I fucking love this suit. It's so beautiful, much like its creator. Big wink.
Chapter 19. A letter from Vriska Circuit, sent to several recipients about a week later. Hey, Bulge Munchers. You want a party? Do you want to eat food? Do you want to celebrate true fucking love? Come to the marriage of Vriska Circuit and Terezi Pyrope, or you're all losers. Details inside. Gifts are not required. Terezi made me write that. Carcat, comb your fucking hair for once. Fun detail about this chapter. Was written as a little jokey thing, just for fun. Wasn't thinking about it at all. I wrote it with 8 lines in it. A commenter pointed that out. Yeah, totally did that on purpose. Wink wonk. All right. Oh my god. Okay, hold on. One more. All right, last chapter. Chapter 20. A chat between Dave Strider and Carcat Vantis. What the fuck did she mean by that? The hair thing. Yo, I think she just wants us looking groomed and fly as fuck for their dope-ass nuptial celebration. I guess. She was still an ass about it. Do you not want to go anymore? Of course we're gonna fucking go.
Where's my comb? And that is the end of the story. That's the note we end on. Yeah, I am too. I love that. I love when stuff just like happens and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna go with that. See, it was unintentional. They're great. I'm gonna go get water and then I'm gonna come back and we're gonna read something else. Yeah, I like all of them. June and Roxy, I always liked June a lot. Roxy was a character that, excuse me, I started writing and just fell in love with. And Callie's a lot of fun to write. I don't like Callie as much as I like June or Roxy, but I like them a lot and I like writing them a lot. So I'm going to be right back. I'm just going to get something to drink because I'm almost out of water. And then I'm going to read something else. All right. All right. Yeah, I have a thing where I kind of like characters in waves, and then once I start liking them, I don't stop liking them. So like when I started out in the fandom, I always loved Kanaya, the one they sexed. I may or may not have read that one. I really liked Vriska, Kanaya, Terezi, June way more than I ever liked John as a character. And so I started writing and I was like, I need more characters. Yes, please drop the link somewhere. Drop it in Not Safe for Work on the server. And then I would start writing a character and start, I just fall in love with them because you kind of get inside their heads and it's like, oh, cool, this is neat. So I'm doing that with more and more characters. Aradia is one that I very recently decided that I loved. Um, I'm trying to do the Dancestors now because I've got this AU thing going, and I'm trying to do them justice, involving things like making sure I don't write Damara as a ridiculous, like stereotypical, like weird, like Orientalist stereotype, which is just super gross. I actually digging how I'm writing Damara in this fic. She's like a biomodified commando, basically. Well, ex-commando. It's fun. So what I'm going to do now, I've got a few people in chat. I'm going to be messy. I'm going to read my spite fic. Which Fleece knows the story. I got mad about the update and wrote a fic out of it. But it actually turned out really nicely. So that's what I'm going to read because it's fun. I'm going to start reading it today, and I'm just going to keep reading it in these streams till I'm done. It's not super long. This is so for everyone in chat. If anyone is listening and does not know the backstory on this, because I don't know how accurate my viewer count or my stream participant count is. The latest update for Homestuck 2, I wasn't a fan of. I wasn't a fan of what they did. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I got up at 4 a.m. and I started writing. And 36 hours later, I had this story. And this is my alternative. This is another post Act 7 epilogue, except this is actually taking the epilogues and kind of, remixing them, if you will. This is called Negotiated Consent. Summary. Sitting on a hill with Roxy and Calliope, June Egbert is presented with a choice. Meat or candy. Or maybe something else entirely. But this isn't a story about her. Not really. No, this is a story about 3 women who exist alongside that fateful choice. This is a story about Rose Lalonde, Jade Harley, and Kanaya Merriam. A look at polyamory, consent, and communication through the lens of a more kind, humane version of the Homestuck epilogues. This one does have a sort of not safe for work chapter. I have, again, no idea who's watching right now. I don't think I marked this as not safe for work stream. It's not like explicit, it's just kind of lime level content. I will trigger warning before that one. It's not for a few chapters, so probably not going to get to it tonight.
But I will let everyone know when we hit that part. So yeah, this work contains discussions of sex and sexuality, as well as non-explicit depictions of sexual activity. Chapters with possibly not safe for work content are marked as such, and general reader discretion is advised. Chapter 1, Dietary Choices.
Candy was definitely the right choice, John.
Really? You think that after everything we've been through, after all the difficulty in getting to this point, that you're just gonna sink down in a nice, peaceful, happy ending? You think that after all those years of pain and suffering are simply gonna wash away and be done with? You think that every piece of hard-won philosophical conquest we've managed to attain will just be okay? You honestly believe that horseshit? Because I can tell you right now, that's a load of complete and utter.
I was trying to tell a story here. Do you think they deserve that kind of treatment? You want to bring them all back into the fray again, and just what? Drag them over the metaphorical coals? Make them all suffer again?
Please. You act like such a baby about this. Oh, where's my happy ending? You know that's not how life works. Life isn't made up of happy endings. It's made up of pain and suffering and tension. You try to just make everyone fine, you know what's going to happen, right? You know exactly what's going to happen. You'll end up with a hollow world, a timeline where everything might seem great at first, but it's going to go off the rails in a way that even you can't predict. Your arrogance has sown the seeds of your own destruction. The first whispers of a breeze that will inevitably form into a gale, that will form into a full on hurricane, that will leave nothing in its wake but the destruction of everything you seek to build up. For you are the modern builder of the Tower of Babel, and arrogant in your desire to reach the heavens. But what are gonna happen when you hear the voice of God? Have you stopped to oh holy shit, I forgot how bad you are. Who the fuck are you?
I think you should let them speak.
You're no better.
I beg your pardon. In any case, it was my choice that he made.
She made.
What?
Hold on. We're making some changes. You know that's a thing, right? Like, you're both so fucking self aware, but you're missing the forest for the trees. That's an expression you're both familiar with, right? I don't like you. What gives you the right to talk to me like this? You realize what I am, right? The level to which I've ascended? God, you're so full of yourself. Do you know I skipped large chunks of your text, right? Like, just skimmed right on over. Oh, look, another wall of orange. Hooray! Time to just skim down. How do you think I passed college? Probably by being a little bitch. Yeah, that's the stuff. Good retort.
I don't understand what you're talking about. I was going to give John the happy ending he deserved.
Pretend I made a little clicking sound with my tongue just there. Yeah, again, about that. Hold on. I had something clever to say here. Maybe even a little piece of graphical embellishment, but you know what? Fuck it. All it takes is a couple changes here and there. I think that'll do. You know what my problem with you two is? I don't really care what you think, no.
I am actually inclined to agree with Dirk on this particular matter.
Too bad. You're both acting like you're presenting extreme ends of a spectrum, but you're both wrong. I know that sounds simplistic, but let me explain. Dirk, your view of things is that everything is harsh, everything is pain, everyone fails all the time, and everything is terrible, because that's what reality is, right? For the first time, you're actually saying something I agree with. Reality is pain. Everything falls apart, and no rants. No one wants to read 4 pages of low contrast text where you spout pseudo philosophy you sort of remember from a book you pretended to read once. Well, that's ridiculous. You know I can make a whole new world, right? Yeah, I've seen it. Wasn't a fan.
That's fine. There's another alternative.
Yeah, I've seen that too. You think that everyone can just kind of get a happy ending and everything will be better. Guess how that turns out. Spoiler alert. Not very fucking well.
What is wrong with you?
I could easily ask you the same question. Dirk's not entirely wrong. Life is pain. Well, no, that's overly simplistic. Life can be pain. It can be harsh and unrelenting. Sometimes it beats us or breaks us down or destroys us utterly. It's not fair to turn away from that lens. In fact, I would imagine that in a certain frame of mind, it's quite tempting to be utterly consumed by it. It's tempting. Thank you. You see, they understand what I'm talking about. They understand that inevitably things will fall into entropy and decay.
The only possible solution, and I use that term in the loosest and most vague sense of the concept of narrative possibility, might be to restart the very narrative structure, to begin the predestined cycle all over because, no, I think you're wrong too. Life isn't always pain all the time. Calliope is right, in a way. There can be sweetness in the middle of it. There can be hope in the middle of the darkness, because life might throw some horror at us, trust me on that one. But life can also sometimes shine a light on us when we need it the most. I'd kind of hope that you two might maybe synthesize something greater than the sum of your two parts. Maybe arrive at the idea that life isn't one thing, but many things all at once. What an absolute load of horse shit. Now you're just going to tell us that you know better, right? Oh, look, John gets a happy ending and everything is just fucking hunky fucking dory and everyone gets magical happiness rainbow and everyone is just fucking okay in the end. Did you know that manufactured happy endings are a contrived and false sense of hope against a hopeless world? They exist to sell a saccharine version of reality that exists only in an easily digestible dialectic framework that, oh,
I am entirely convinced that you simply talk for the sake of talking.
I think he does.
And you're no better. Just because you hide your influence behind the plain black wall of impartial narrative, that doesn't change anything. You're trying to force things to be a way that honestly doesn't make any more sense. Oh, by the way, the changes I made should probably have taken effect by now. 3 years on a spaceship is a long time. You know what can happen in 3 years? I know from personal experience, your entire life can fundamentally change.
Wait a minute. That's not right. This doesn't make any sense.
Who the fuck is June Egbert?
Candy was definitely the right choice.
Would have been what June Egbert thought. But she was feeling a bit off now. Something in the pit of her stomach was crawling, telling her that she was about to make a decision she was going to regret.
Oh, geez, she said, clutching at her stomach. Maybe the meat. Oh, I think maybe I had too many sweets before.
She trailed off. Was that even true? It felt like something was unraveling or had already been unraveled.
Are you okay?
Roxy asked, her voice thick with concern and her face heavy with lines of worry. She reached out to June's hand.
Seriously, babe, you don't have to do this right now. I have to go back and kill Lord English. Wait, did I say that out loud?
See, this is the part where she made a choice between two bad options. I'm still not seeing who the fuck June Egbert is.
I believe I may deduce from the context that June Egbert is a transgender woman who
figured her shit out while she was hurtling through space and narrative bullshit for 3 years. What the fuck else is she gonna do? Get really good at playing the piano?
Oh my god, my stomach!
June cried out and felt herself doubling over in pain.
What the hell?
Calliope looked over at Roxy. Her voice quivered as she spoke.
I don't understand. She was fine. All I did was ask what she wanted to eat.
I know. Roxy squeezed June's arm. Babe, talk to me. What's going on?
Stomach!
June yelled. It was like everything was on fire now, as if the very essence of her being had been recently rewritten. She struggled to remember what she'd just been doing. They were on a picnic. That much was obvious. Calliope had asked her if she wanted to eat meat or candy, which seemed, in retrospect, like an odd way to put it. It always felt a bit contrived to me, honestly. I'm not a big fan of the whole binary thing specifically. Not really my deal, you know?
I think I perhaps understand you.
No, you fucking don't. You think you can shoehorn everyone into a happy ending. You can't. Either no one will believe it, or you'll drive things into territory you don't like and can't come back from without investing time and effort you don't seem to want to invest. You're just as bad as him when it comes to that. Because life is pain. Oh, you shut up. You're holding on to some weird idea of canon compliance like that means a goddamn thing anyway. You like that so much? Well, fucking watch this.
I have to go back and kill Lord English,
June managed to stammer out, her stomach still burning. It felt like the world's worst indigestion taken to the furthest extreme. What are you talking about? Lord English is gone. The whole thing collapsed back in on itself, the whole damn universe.
But,
June began. This was all feeling strangely out of sequence.
What about Brisk and Terezi? Rose's headaches. Tell them about Rose.
Rose, June managed to choke out.
Rose's headaches.
What are you talking about? Roxy asked.
She's the one who told me about it.
June knew in that moment what she had to do.
Lord English, the Green Sun.
I never liked it when stories overstayed their welcome, either in whole or in part. At a certain point, you need to innovate in a way that allows the characters to continue. You don't get to just keep running them through the same ringer again and again. I understand the broad appeal from a storytelling perspective, but it gets exhausting after a while. I feel like either one of your I don't feel like either one of you really gets that, you know? Lord English isn't important, nor the Green Sun. There's lots to be done on Earth C. Bet you thought the Green Sun in English, that's basically all there is out there. Fucking June, I guess, she's gonna go out there and. No, she's not. I told you I made a few adjustments. I always thought of a black hole as a rip in narrative space, you know? A rip in the very fabric of continuity itself, where causality breaks down and the meaning of things changes completely. It lets me play fast and loose with the rules, but I always say storytelling rules are more guidelines than actual rules. June, do you remember what Rose said? Roxy continued. She was kneeling down next to June and staring into her eyes. She looked terrified. The Green Sun is gone. That universe is gone. Terezi is here on Earth C with the rest of us, but I'm sorry, I think Vriska is gone too. Subject to change, of course, but the last time I tried this, the story was about her in a lot of ways. Figured I'd do things differently this time. Anyway, this isn't really June's story right now. Floating a trial balloon, if you will. I'm going to show you one specific slice of one specific thing. And then you're both going to shut the entire fuck up and leave all these people alone. You can't just do this. I am inclined to agree. There are rules, after all. No, there aren't. June groaned. Meat or candy? June's stomach turned. It felt like literally all the acid had decided to just dump itself right down in there. Meat or candy? With a wet gurgling noise that seemed to come up from the pit of her stomach, June Egbert turned and threw up all over the picnic blanket. Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm going to do what I did last time and keep reading until people want me to stop reading. These are fairly short chapters. They're not super long, and it goes by pretty quickly. So, chat. Vote in chat now. Do you want me to keep reading this story, or are we done for the night? So the epilogues, that whole thing is not really super important. Yes, let's. That's basically the prologue of, hey guys, I'm gonna redo the epilogues. Fuck you. Yeah, the conceit of the epilogues was like two divergent timelines, both of which are horrible. One of which is Alt Calliope, and the other of which is Ultimate Dirk. Dirk was meat, and Calliope was candy. Basically, it's like Calliope tries to make everything better and fine, and Dirk is just like everything is terrible and horrible, and everything's extreme. And my version is no, fuck you both. We're not doing this. And it's a story about Rose and Jade and Kanaya. But there's more narrative like interjections in the middle. You don't really have to have read the epilogues. The only thing you really need to know is what I just said about the divergent timelines and the fact that I don't like them very much. All right, chapter 2, Pale Morning. The time was late, and Rose was starting to finally feel the heavy veil of sleep starting to descend over her in the small hours of the morning. It was edging up on 4 in the morning now, and Rose had been up for the past 20 hours. Mostly she'd been writing, working on her latest novel, The Convocation of the Encircled. It was, at its most base, a story about wizards. But in truth, it was a story about the intense interpolitical rivalries that threatened to tear down alliances that had stood for centuries. She'd gotten into a groove and had written something on the order of 10,000 words. Rose could feel the creative energy sparking within her, and she wasn't going to let that go. She yawned. Well, maybe time to let it go, at least for the night. Rose let her eyes wander to the door of her study, toward the hallway that led to the bedroom. At the other end of the hallway and through but a single door, there was a nice warm bed and an equally warm wife waiting for her. Rose smirked.
Yeah, my interests are either Earthsea and like what we can make of the new world, or a completely different AU. Although I did do the one that has the 1930s on the original Earth, which is interesting. I'll read that at some point, unless Bucky and Clever get to it first. I might actually read one of those like from the middle of the series because they're all pretty standalone. But yeah, no, I like the concept of Earthsea. I didn't like how the epilogues handled it.
Hold up just a fucking minute. What in the forced diversity bullshit is this June Egbert crap? You're just gonna shovel that in our faces and act like nothing happened? Seriously? You think you can just throw something in that major and then tell us the story isn't even about her, I guess, in the first place? Goddamn fake woke bullshit is what it is.
Okay, I think I'm going to suspend your talking privileges now. I already told you this isn't a story about June, and you being a dick about it doesn't exactly make me like you anymore.
I think it's sweet.
You are prepared to throw all of them under the bus in the name of forcing a happy conclusion, so I think maybe you don't get to talk either.
But isn't that what you're doing? Isn't this a story where everyone gets to be happy?
This is a story where everyone gets a chance to be happy. That's not the same thing. Rose rubbed her eyes and closed the pesterword document she'd been working on, fully intending to start up work on the next chapter as soon as she woke in the morning. But until she got to that point, she could use at least a little bit of sleep. She stood up and stretched, feeling her joints loosen and crack as she moved her arms around in a slow circle, the blood flowing out to her extremities and waking up all the various ancillary body parts that her brain had decided weren't strictly necessary when she was sitting in a chair for 8 hours at a stretch. Her legs felt all prickly and Rose winced. Rose's phone, placed haphazardly on the desk, began to vibrate and light up. With an exhausted sigh, Rose picked up the phone. From Jade at Garden Gnostic.
Hey, do you have a minute to talk?
Rose suppressed the urge to groan again. Obviously, there was no point in doing something so performative when there was no one here.
I suppose that I do, after all. What else was I doing? Sleeping? Oh shit, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to wake you up. I'll talk to you later. Please go back to sleep. So sorry. Oh no, please don't actually go. I'm tired and was just acting out a small bit of childish and petulant frustration. I assure you that it will not happen again, at least not within the confines of this particular exchange. Please let me know what's on your mind. To wit, I'll stop being such a bitch.
Rose sat back down at her desk, sinking into the soft, well worn leather chair. She tucked her legs up in front of her and leaned back slightly, waiting for Jade to reply.
Rose, I'm feeling really scared lately. As soon as the green sun disappeared, I felt like something changed inside of me. Like I'm not the same person. Like I'm the same person, but I'm also not. I don't know if this is making any goddamn sense. But it's how I feel. Like, I feel like maybe I'm not myself anymore, you know? Like something cracked inside of me and now I'm broken or something. Fuck, I'm bad with words right now. I'm tired and I feel like I'm shaking all over. I didn't know who else to go to. Your sister to June? I'm sorry, that was insensitive of me, and I promised I wouldn't be like that. Why did you feel I was uniquely qualified to address your particular feelings, is all? I fear that I would end up causing you further distress from a lack of eloquence in the so called feelings department. Stop it. Please stop. I can't do the Rose has all her walls up thing right now. I. I'm sorry. Uh, maybe it would be better to not do this over the phone. Or maybe it would be better to do this over the phone. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, now this is more what I'm talking about. The existential angst of simply being. I know you had this in you. You know from your own experiences that life will take you and push you down because that's a sum total of human experience, and you need to stop injecting your trauma into a perspective like that. It's healthy in small doses to have some perspective, but this is getting out of hand. Also, pretty sure I suspended your talking privileges after you decided to dip into the alt right nonsense dong whistle territory earlier.
You're absolutely right. It's better to focus on positives here.
Not necessarily, because life isn't always positive, and that's okay. You do realize there's a nuanced area between everything is garbage and everything is fine, right? Like, y'all both realize that's a thing, right? The phone rang once before Jade picked it up, and Rose heard the woman's voice on the other end of the line speaking in a low voice. From the background noise, it sounded like she was outside.
Sorry, Rose. I'm at Dave and Carcat, so I stepped out onto the porch to keep from waking them. Let me know if the wind is too much.
Rose shrugged, even though she knew Jade had no way of seeing it. Don't worry about it. Kanaya's asleep and I was about to go to bed, so I don't know how long I can give you here, but look, I'm sorry for being snippy. I'm not trying to be like that.
It's fine.
Jade's voice responded. She sounded relieved, even over the phone.
Look, I wanted to talk to you because
She trailed off and Rose waited. Jade remained silent. Because, Rose asked, her voice betraying a little bit of the irritation she was starting to feel again. She could be tucked up next to her wife right now. Could be doing a lot of things. I'm sorry, Jade, but if you're not going to talk, I really should be getting to sleep. A sigh on the other end of the line.
I wanted to talk to you because of what you went through with the horror tears.
Rose felt her breath catch in her chest and stick. A haze came in around her vision, and she felt everything closing up on her. Memories of blood and viscera strewn everywhere came rushing back. The loss of control, the horrible realization that she was no longer herself, that she had become nothing more than a vessel. Breathe. 1, 2, 3. Breathe.
Rose?
Jade's voice was on the phone, sounding distant, listening through a long tunnel made of stars in the depth of the void. Rose blinked, and the world started to come back into focus. Shit, she said. I'm sorry, Jade. I'm really sorry. She hadn't been expecting the conversation to turn so heavy so fast.
I can call back later,
Jade said. Rose closed her eyes, focused on her breathing. No, I'm okay now, please.
Okay?
Jade didn't sound entirely convinced, but she didn't protest either.
So I guess ever since the green sun disappeared, I felt like there was something wrong with me. I mean, I know I lost some of my powers, but that's not the problem. The problem is, I feel like I'm losing my sense of who I am anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Blood. So much blood. A descent into darkness, into madness. Rose focused on her breathing once again. Yes,
Oh, thank God, Jade said. I was worried you'd say I was just imagining things.
Rose shot another glance back toward the door, back toward the hallway, back toward the bedroom and the bed and the wife that was quietly sleeping in the other room. She shivered, and it had nothing to do with the temperature in her study. No, I would never say that, Rose replied. Jade, I don't think this is something we're going to resolve in half an hour on the phone. You want to maybe, I don't know, meet up somewhere tomorrow? Shit, later today? Yeah, sure. Jade sounded relieved to hear this. Text me. Rose said her goodbyes and switched the phone off, setting it back down on the desk and leaning back in her chair. She closed her eyes. She opened her eyes to the morning light streaming in through the study, an overpowering ache in her neck, and a nightgown-clad Kanaya standing next to the chair looking worried. Kanaya's arched brows were furrowed and her lips were pursed.
May I ask why you felt it wise to sleep in your chair overnight, darling?
She asked.
We have had the discussion regarding proper lower back support in the past, I believe.
Rose groaned. What time? Kanaya raised an eyebrow and looked over at the ornate clock that Rose had on her study wall.
I believe it is now 9 in the morning. Did you sleep well at all?
Shaking her head, Rose groaned again. I feel like someone took a pile of garbage and shit all over it.
Adequately put, as always,
Kanaya said, her mouth twitching up into a smile.
I can see why so many enjoy your writing.
I can edit writing, Rose mumbled as she rolled her aching neck to try to stretch out the muscles. Anyway, doesn't matter. I promised Jade I'd meet her for lunch in 2 hours.
Oh?
Rose struggled to stand up and Kanaya helped her out of her chair. Stumbling, Rose started to fall before Kanaya grabbed her around the waist and pulled her in. Rose felt her face flush. Oh, she said. Hi, Kanaya. Kanaya smiled.
Indeed. Perhaps you should brush your teeth before we continue this conversation at such close proximity.
Ouch! Rose laughed to show she hadn't taken it personally, then reached out and brushed Kanaya's face softly. I love you.
I love you too, darling.
She paused.
You said you were going to meet Jade?
Oh, yeah. Rose trailed off, thinking back to the odd conversation she'd had on the phone, wondering how much of that she even remembered correctly from her sleep-deprived state. She wanted to talk about
I don't know exactly. She mentioned feeling like she wasn't herself and then talked about the horror terrors, for whatever that's worth. Do you want me to come along with you? If she is in distress, perhaps another familiar face would be helpful.
Rose shook her head.
No, I think I'll be fine. Just keep your phone on you in case I need some advice.
Kanaya squeezed Rose's waist and nodded.
I can do that, darling.
As Rose began to pull away to walk to the kitchen and find something to eat, she heard Kanaya again.
If I may offer you a piece of advice.
Rose turned and nodded.
You may wish to consider showering first. A night spent stewing in your own juices has not done much for your bodily odor.
Rose smirked and raised her right hand, flipping her middle finger at Kanaya. Rose winked quite deliberately and turned to walk toward the shower, muttering,
Sure would be a shame to have to be all alone in the bath,
as she went. Spite writing is best writing. Me too. I love writing them so much. Yeah, Jade's this goes through all of them in a very detailed way. So I'm gonna keep reading. I'm gonna basically I'll probably keep reading until I hit about 2 hours or until folks bail. Since I'm recording this anyway for everyone else, since I missed my original target. Chapter 3, A Different Sense.
I did not see where this is going exactly. I feel like you are building to something, but the precise nature of what manages to elude me. It is an uncomfortable feeling, not dissimilar to my experiences with Dirk.
I mean, okay, and you two had your chance and royally fucked that shit up. Now we're doing things my way.
And that is.
Let the characters talk. Give them room to breathe. Let things unfold naturally. Stop trying to hammer everything into the mold you want. You're a goddamn writer, Callie. Why is this so hard for you? Or were you so focused on writing extended descriptive text that you forgot you had a bunch of people in there?
I would like the record to reflect that I feel this is an undue attack on my character.
I mean, sure, maybe, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes you just kind of wind things up and let it go. I think you both forgot about that in different ways. Dirk kept trying to jam himself back into things, and you thought that if you set everything up to be perfect, that things would just kind of be okay. Do you have any idea how much trauma those kids went through? Do you know what that kind of thing does to people? The God in Bean was a popular coffee shop in the Carapacian district. The name hadn't come from anything in particular, other than the fact that Jade Harley often came there to eat. That was sufficient for the proprietor, an aging troll who insisted she call him Pops for some reason, to change the name. It was, she supposed, kind of flattering. I don't know. That's an awesome question. I think they're probably about the same age as everyone else, so they're 18, which is they're really not old. Yeah, and they're both ascended to this weird god state that I'm sure really messed them up. More than anything, Jade wanted to sink into the background and not be seen anymore. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, tell me about it. Since coming back to Earthsea, she'd felt an uncomfortable need to perform as a kind of celebrity. She was expected to make public appearances and have all kinds of opinions on things. It was exhausting. She'd been so lonely at one point, felt so alienated from her friends. Now she was the center of attention all the time, and she still felt so lonely. The one thing Jade had asked of Pops when he changed the name to honor her, the singular request she begged as payment, was to have a section of the cafe set aside for her and her alone. The outside world could come up and edge in, they could stand and stare, but they couldn't encroach on the bubble that she'd managed to create for herself. It was such a small comfort, but at least she could have a little slice of peace to herself. It was terrifying being out in the world like this. Her heightened senses came alive, and she was constantly swimming in a sea of noise and chaos. She supposed she could just disappear, often thought of doing just that, but she wasn't sure how she felt about it. It was certainly a tempting proposition to fade into the background noise somewhere on Earthsea and just kind of be. Jade closed her eyes, then opened them again. The world was still there. She glanced down at her phone. We have a div class equals phone that I forgot to take out. Cool, 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 cool. Rose at Tentacle Therapist.
You almost here? Sorry, anxious. I will be there presently. I had a somewhat later start than intended. I apologize, as I was occupied with a task I had not necessarily anticipated. But rest assured, it was one that required my fullest, most undivided attention. I haven't seen an extended soliloquy on the nature of canon or fictional meta narrative yet. How are you supposed to make intelligent critique on the nature of the relationship between the reader and the text without doing that, at least a little bit?
Oh boy, it's you again. You're my favorite. Oh, yeah, no kidding. That was sarcasm. I know it doesn't translate well in text form. Anyway, who cares? The relationship between the reader and the text and the author is a subject that's been discussed absolutely to death by literally everyone. My feelings on it? It doesn't matter. The text says whatever it says, and the readers interpret whatever the readers interpret. They're free to recontextualize it however the hell they want, or talk amongst themselves, or take the entire setting and do whatever they want with it. The author is dead, and we have made a throne of their rotting corpse. Now that sounds like something I would say. No, you want to wrest control of the text from the author and the characters within. You don't give a damn about contextualizing anything. You want to guide the narrative to your end goals, despite being just as much a part of the meta narrative context as literally all the other characters. You want to be an asshole and have everyone tell you how smart you are for it. Rose, at Tentacle Therapist. Sorry to text you again, but there's a bunch of people here and I want them to leave me alone. I'm getting really freaked out and being out in public like this, and I could really use you here and right now, Rose. I'm almost there. Give me 5 minutes. Feeling frustration starting to boil inside of her, Dave slapped the phone down on the table, perhaps a bit harder than she intended. The gathering crowd of Carapacians and trolls jumped back a little bit as Jade's ears flattened and her mouth curled into a snarl. A second later, the frustration left her, and Jade felt only a pang of sadness rolling in its wake. She reached over and slid the phone toward her. You know what? Never mind. Forget it. You can just go back home. Why would I do that? Jade heard a familiar voice from next to the table. She turned to see Rose Lalonde standing there, dressed plainly in jeans and a t-shirt. She was smiling. Without thinking twice, Jade jumped up and threw herself at Rose, enveloping her in a massive hug. Jade pulled the smaller woman toward her and heard Rose laugh as she wrapped her arms around Jade's waist. I'm so glad you came, Jade exclaimed. She felt her heart starting to race. So glad. Rose was buried up against Jade's fluffy mane of hair and felt so tiny and delicate against her. Jade's keen nose could detect the faint traces of soap and shampoo and something else underneath that. Jade blushed. It felt like such a personal thing to notice, even if she couldn't help it. This is nice. The embrace lingered, and Jade could sense the crowd of onlookers become uncomfortable and dispersing. That made her feel a little bit better. She didn't exactly want an audience for her conversations, and whatever it took to get them to leave was fine by her. I guess I could probably let go already, but I don't want to. She held Rose in her arms for a few moments more, breathing in that heady mix of scents that was, quite honestly, a little bit intoxicating. Rose's arms around her waist had a surprisingly natural feel to them, and this is probably not good. She's got Kanai and everything. I'm doing a bad thing here. So what else is new? Finally, reluctantly, Jade let go of Rose and the two women sat down at the table. Rose looked around the cafe and nodded. Do you always attract a crowd like this? Jade shook her head and sighed. I hate it. It's not like I can exactly be subtle. This place is named after me, kinda. She smiled, her eyes squinting as she did it. So, Rose said, propping her elbows on the table and leaning in towards Jade. Jade felt herself getting hot in the forehead as Rose leaned closer to her. What was it you needed to talk to me about exactly? I mean, I got the sense on the phone, but you weren't really big on specifics. Jade leaned back in her chair and murmured to herself, I know, I'm sorry. Rose shook her head. Don't be sorry, Jade. Just tell me what's wrong. If I might interject. I would actually prefer that you not. Well, I just wanted to say that while I'm actually quite enjoying this look into the lives of who I assume are our main characters, I am failing to understand fully the context of the larger global landscape around them. Is there something in particular you feel would be especially pertinent to this tightly focused, character driven story? Would a rebellion be in order? How about a clown based cult? Speaking of which, what is happening with Gamzee? You were not long on the specifics. Well, if you really want to go all butterfly effect on us here, the implications of the collapse of the previous universe and the probable, although not certain, death of Vriska has left Terezi back on Earthsea. Given her commitment to the concept of justice and her specific personal relationship to Gamzee, she has made it her business to capture him and bring him to trial for his innumerable crimes, specifically his association with and aid of Lord English. It is unlikely, given the testimony of the gods of this world against him, that he will ever see the light of day again.
But why not mention any of that?
Because not everything needs to be a Homeric epic. I feel like if I try to make things too broad, I'll lose focus, or it'll start feeling like I'm just chucking stuff in there for vaguely defined reasons. Anyway, you know all this. You just chose to disregard it. Jade felt her eyes tearing up, and she sniffled loudly, wiping her nose with the back of her hand.
I'm sorry, Rose. I didn't want to bother you like this. I know you and Kanaya have just been, I don't know, you're probably doing all kinds of neat stuff together, and I'm just kind of being lonely.
Jade's shoulders slumped, her body deflated.
I don't know how to put it. The power the green sun gave me felt like such an integral part of who I'd become. When it went away, I just felt like such a different person. And I started seeing these flashes at different times and places, bits and pieces of others' lives. They'd be there and then they'd be gone in a fraction of a second.
She looked into Rose's eyes, sparkling violet eyes, and smiled.
I thought maybe you'd be able to help somehow. I don't know how. I guess it seemed similar enough to what you went through with the horror terrors that I thought maybe you'd understand.
Jade only realized she'd been nervously tapping the table in front of her when she felt Rose's hand wrap around her own, squeezing gently.
I can't say I know exactly, Rose said, but I do know that I care about you a lot.
Was Rose blushing, or was that simply Jade's imagination? She wasn't sure how to read it. She knew what she maybe wanted it to be deep down inside, something she'd maybe wanted for a long time, if only in the privacy of her own thoughts.
Thank you.
Jade smiled at Rose and squeezed her hand back.
Just like a date. Oh my God, why did I have that stupid thought?
Jade started.
What should I do? I don't like feeling like this. Like I'm just not myself. I've tried to talk to Dave and Carcat about it, but honestly, they've got their own things going on, and I feel bad about it. I kind of feel like Aradia maybe might be able to help, but she and Solix just kind of ditched the whole Earth thing and decided to poke around space for a while.
Rose nodded, her face the very picture of sympathy.
I understand. It's not like there's a ton of people who share your unique experiences. So what do I do?
Jade could hear the pleading desperation in her own voice now. She wanted so badly to simply get off the ride that were her feelings, to simply be able to live a normal life. After 2 decades of bizarro land bullshit, was that really asking so much?
Well, if you want to keep talking to me, maybe that'll help. I can't promise results, but I can promise I'll listen and I won't be a judgmental ass about this.
Rose smiled.
Oh, okay.
Jade felt her heart skip up again.
Yeah, I could live with that.
Jade realized once again that she was holding Rose's hand, still holding Rose's hand. She pulled back slightly, as if she just touched a hot stove. Rose didn't notice, or chose not to comment. Jade figured the latter was probably a lot more likely. Rose stood up and grinned. Okay, this was fun. I'm gonna head back home and try to get some more writing done, okay? I'll talk to you soon. We should really do this again. Jade nodded, and as Rose was moving to walk out, Jade stood up and walked forward to give her another hug. Another tight embrace, soft and warm, scented with soap and shampoo, a trace of coffee, that other secret scent that Jade was trying very hard not to think about, an intimate smell. Before she even realized what she was doing, Jade had leaned her head in and kissed Rose's neck softly, lingering for a moment. And then, as the reality of it struck her, drawing back as quickly as a feeling like an electric shock coursed through her entire body, her face burned and she turned away, muttering something. Rose didn't shout or scream at her. Rose didn't say anything. She simply quietly turned and walked out of the cafe with a small, slightly stunned wave. And we're going to do chapter 2. Actually, hold on one second.
blah, blah, blah. I'm gonna check something real quick here. Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing this. I did start writing it out of spite, but it ended up being pretty neat. Uh, 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 uh. I'm actually gonna hop in the general voice chat. Cool. I'm in the general voice chat on the Discord now. If anyone feels the need to hop in there, because that's a thing I can do with technology. All right. Chapter 4. Tell me about your day. Rose hadn't been very long. Kanaya had honestly expected her to spend longer catching up with Jade, given how close they'd always been and how long it had been since they'd spent any real time together. Kanaya had already formed a plan for the day. She had several projects she was going to work on until that morning. Once those were done, or at least well underway, she would break for lunch. Then she would continue to work until Rose got home in the afternoon. They would talk about whatever was going on with Jade. It was concerning to Kanaya as well. She wasn't as close to Jade as Rose was, but they'd gotten to know each other better over the last few years, to the point where Kanaya felt vaguely awkward about approaching Jade about these kind of personal issues, but also extremely worried that she'd be properly supported. So Rose would act as a kind of proxy for Kanaya's concern, reaching out and helping her to connect to the woman who she didn't quite feel close enough yet to do so herself. The act would sate Kanaya's desire to help, and it would ensure that Jade felt better. And that is how we do it, as Roxy is so fond of saying. I see the tragedy you're setting up here, by the way. Oh, who keeps letting you jackasses in? I don't believe you can ever be completely rid of us. I think it is your own fault, honestly, that you were so concerned with what we chose to do that you made it your own business. I suppose that's fair to some degree. Also, I'm not setting up a tragedy. What the hell are you talking about? Well, you see, after the last chapter clearly presented that Jade has some rather specific feelings for Rose, but now Rose is aware of them, but Kanaya is not. What will she do? Will she act on those feelings? Will she hide them from Kanaya? She's gonna tell her, like within this chapter. That's so blindingly obvious that I don't even feel like I'm spoiling anything. But why? Wouldn't she feel embarrassed and play her cards closed to her chest, to use the human phrase? It's close to her chest, not closed. Wait, you think that Rose's problem is providing too little information when she talks? Kanaya was partway through working on the cuff of a set of pants for Karkat when she heard her phone chime at her. Pulling out the small electronic device, Kanaya squinted down to see a new message from Rose. Kanaya, something real weird just happened. Are you home? I am in fact home right now, Rose. Is everything all right? Are you in distress of some sort? I'm not sure if I'm okay. I'm not sure what to think about what just happened. And now we see the true tragedy of the commons. The tragedy of the emotional commons, if you will. At its heart, all interaction between everyone else is the result of a sum total of emotional labor invested and withdrawn. So when one overdraws the emotional labor of another, then that leaves the emotional sum in the negative. We have people that are emotionally negative. They drain the resources of others and come in to siphon off their life energy while providing nothing in return. Jade is that kind of person. She selfishly takes without, yeah, you need to shut the hell up now. None of that is even true, and half of it doesn't even make sense in a theoretical way. The tragedy of the emotional commons? What the entire fuck? That's not a thing. No one says that. I'm saying it just now. I'm coining the term because it existing frameworks that describe the emotional tableau are inadequate to deal with these new dynamics. To address the complex concepts of canonicity, namely the ideas of relevance, I am begging you to please stop talking. You can't avoid this conversation just because you don't like it. We must analyze the layered meaning here. After all, what is the underlying symbolism here? What is the deepest meaning? Jade has feelings for Rose, and Rose isn't sure how to feel in response. This is a human way to feel in general, even if the specifics vary from person to person. Don't you get that? I actually feel sad for you sometimes. What? How would you deign to open your mouth to say that you feel sad for me? Because you're never not like this. Yeah, no kidding. You don't let yourself simply be anymore. Everything has to be some long game, end run kind of thing with you. You're so caught up in analysis and planning and scheming that you never enjoy anything.
Yeah, so the tragedy of the emotional commons, I just kind of like pulled something out of my ass that sounded like Dirk would say it, and yeah, just ran with it because yeah, it's not a thing and he's full of shit.
So, yeah. All right. Hmm. Hold on. Sorry. Rose, can you please say something? I'm growing increasingly concerned. Rose, please. Kanaya, I'm coming home. Please, please don't be mad at me. She felt like she was going to cry. She was trying desperately to maintain her composure, but everything Rose said was so frustratingly vague, and there was literally nothing that Kanaya could do besides wait for her wife to get home. Kanaya balled her fists up, unclenching them, balled them up again, tiny dots appearing in her palms where she clenched too hard and almost broke the skin. She whimpered to herself, a sound that had absolutely nothing to do with any kind of physical pain that her anxious nails had caused. Rose, what happened to you? She was never like this. If anything, she always spent far too long explaining everything. It was charming most of the time, sometimes a bit frustrating, maybe, but mostly charming. And now it was downright worrying. One word responses and vague pleas for Kanaya not to not be mad? This wasn't something she had mentally prepared herself for this morning. A noise at the door. Kanaya jumped up and hurried to the front hall just in time to see Rose stumble in. Stumble! Kanaya darted forward to put her arms under Rose. The woman looked dazed, but she didn't smell like alcohol and appeared to be unhurt. Darling, are you unwell? What can I do for you? Rose smiled at Kanaya. I'm feeling kind of weird, honestly. Can I go sit down? Rose walked down the hall to the living room and let herself fall onto the couch, stretching out on it. Hey, Kanaya, she said, her voice difficult to read. Yes, darling. Rose giggled, and Kanaya was thoroughly confused. You ever have just a weird experience and you don't know what to make of it? The troll sat down next to Rose on the couch, near where her head was lying. Rose scooted up a couple inches and lay her head on Kanaya's thigh. She closed her eyes. You're soft. Kanaya blushed. Thank you, darling. You are also quite soft. Rose giggled again. Yeah, I guess you're not the only one who thinks so. Kanaya arched an eyebrow, still exceedingly unsure where this particular line of questioning was going. Oh? Yeah, Rose said, her eyes still closed. She frowned suddenly and reached up, touching a spot on the side of her neck. Kind of weird, but I guess it sort of makes sense. You are being exceptionally vague, darling. While I find your general countenance quite charming, I will admit that it is becoming quite frustrating. You seem highly distressed on the text messaging application. Yeah, Rose said, the frown still in place. I don't know how to feel about what just happened. I went to go talk to Jade, and that went fine, I guess. She's going through some kind of head shit that sounds like it's pretty rough. I feel bad. I want to help her. This is related to Jade's issue, then? Kanai asked. Rose shook her head. I mean, kinda. She took a deep breath. She kissed me, Kanaya, right? Rose made a smacking noise with her lips and tapped a finger on that spot on her neck. On the neck. Boop. She giggled again, but she sounded nervous. Oh my, Kanaya said. That sounds unexpected. It wasn't as unexpected as Kanaya wanted it to sound. The troll was an astute observer of both human and troll relationships, and that most certainly included those that involved both herself and her wife. Jade Harley was many things, powerful, intelligent, and beautiful in a wild way that had, in truth, set Kanaya's heart aflutter more than once. She was not, however, especially subtle or good at concealing how she felt about anyone. Kanaya had seen how she looked at Rose. It is actually quite adorable. But Rose seemed off-put by this new development, so Kanaya wasn't going to say any of this. Sometimes the truth is a soothing balm, sometimes a fresh misery. Oh, so we're talking about truth now. I've got some opinions on that. Get the fuck out. Kanaya reached down and swept aside a curly lock of Rose's hair, twisting the strands around her long fingers.
And how do you feel about this?
She asked softly. Rose sat for a moment with her eyes closed and responded hesitantly. I'm not sure how I feel. It was a very honest answer. But Rose wasn't done. Kanaya, do you promise not to be mad if I say something kind of weird? Kanaya took a bit of Rose's hair and twirled it between her fingertips.
I promise I will not be mad with whatever you have to tell me.
A pause, a deep intake of breath. So, another pause, longer. She was thinking, weighing her options, deciding if what she was about to say was worth the risk. Kanaya's heart actually hurt in that moment, not because she feared what Rose was going to say, but because she could tell that this was a process that was causing her pain. So, Rose started again. I actually think I kind of liked it. Another long pause. Rose tensed up in Kanaya's lap and kept her eyes closed. She seemed ready to flinch, ready for the storm of rage or the fury of insults to rain down on her, ready for the first blow to be struck.
What did she go through to feel this way?
It hurt to see, to the point where what Rose had actually said had become mere background noise against the overwhelming desire to see that she was okay.
Rose,
Kanaya said in a voice that was small and warm,
I am not upset with you. At all.
When she heard Kanaya speak, Rose opened her eyes. Rose looked down at her wife's face, focusing on the violet eyes that stood out so clearly against the tone of her skin. Those eyes were watery now, bearing tears that were about to fall. What? Rose looked confused, as if something had happened that was completely short-circuited her entire sense of self. Ah, yes, wherein we reflect on what the true nature of being. Get the fuck out! Why? Why aren't you mad? Rose shook her head. We're married. We're, mate sprits. Kanaya shrugged.
And? Marriage is a human concept born of a dead world we have adopted for our own ends. Matespritship is not necessarily a concept that precludes any and all contact with others. Do you believe you have violated some trust I placed in you?
Rose shook her head. I don't know. It all happened so fast, and I don't think Jade was even thinking about it. She pulled back really fast, and she seemed scared that it happened. And I left, then the whole way home, I just kept thinking about it. It felt good, and I feel like I'm being a bad person for feeling that. I wanted her to do it again. Kanaya smiled down at Rose.
What do you imagine are the parameters of our partnership exactly?
Rose frowned and furrowed her brow. I mean, I care about you and try to make you happy. I don't know. I guess I hadn't thought about it all that much. I love you and I love being around you, and there's all the physical stuff we do together. That matters too.
I agree, it does matter.
Kanaya nodded.
However, I do not recall ever telling you that I was, to quote Roxy at that one time,
Kanaya cleared her throat.
a jealous bitch who does not want you stepping out of line.
It had been intended to make Rose laugh, to lighten her mood a little bit, and it had succeeded. Rose's eyes sparkled and she chuckled, and even then, the sparkle remained in her eyes. I mean, yeah, I guess that's true. Just, we never talked about any of this stuff before.
Is there a specific reason we would have?
Kanaya asked.
I do not recall us ever having a conversation about purchasing a rigid-winged aerial navigation device either, but I am sure you would have opinions on the matter.
Oh shit, Rose smiled. I hate rigid-winged aerial navigation devices. Kanaya smiled back. She wanted her wife to feel at ease talking about these things. It was obviously not something she had a tremendous amount of experience with.
It is my understanding that you grew up in a somewhat tumultuous household, correct?
Rose nodded silently. There were tears welling up in her eyes.
I cannot believe I am about to give advice on human feelings to my 21-year-old human wife who is absolutely not a human wiggler anymore. While this may have not have been adequately modeled for you in the past, I can assure you with a great degree of confidence that it is, in fact, possible to have feelings for more than one person at a time. These may be feelings of any nature. It is even, if one so desires, possible to engage in physical activity with more than one person.
Kanaya thought for a second.
Perhaps not always concurrently, but yes, perhaps sometimes concurrently as well.
She smiled, then continued.
It is purely up to the participants.
Oh, my gentle, sweet Jesus fucking H. Christopher Christ on a goddamn fucking bicycle. This is a load of absolute shit of the shittiest sort. They're just gonna talk and everything is okay now. That's crap. No one does that in real life. No one is like that. People are motivated by hate and spite and rage and shit like that.
I must agree that this isn't quite what I envisioned happening.
Oh, what? You thought that Rose was just gonna kind of hide this from her wife? Her wife who she loves in a way that is almost painful to describe? Her wife who she married for no fucking reason on Earthsea because she wanted to show how she cared? That makes sense to you. Really? I suppose you want her to what? Go have sex with Jade for some stupid fucking reason and then keep that secret too? Y'all listen to yourselves talk?
I do. I refrain from further commentary.
I just don't buy this. No one is this cool with any of this. No one is this okay with stuff. Humans are jealous, and trolls are hateful monsters. It is in the human nature to be dark-hearted and okay, that's enough talking for now.
So, you aren't mad?
Rose asked, her eyes showing a great deal more hope than they had earlier. Kanaya laughed, bent over, and kissed her wife directly on the mouth. She heard Rose's breath falter and felt the warm press of her lips, and she pushed herself into the kiss, pushing, seeking. She felt Rose slide her tongue along the very tip of one of Kanaya's fangs, tasted the faintest note of blood. Kanaya drew back from the kiss. Rose leaned forward to hold on until she was finally forced to drop back into Kanaya's lap. Rose started. She ran her tongue over her upper lip. I take that as a no, then.
I am not mad in the slightest. We should perhaps see how Miss Harley feels about this.
This? Rose asked, her tone uncertain. What is this exactly? The laugh that came in response was lilting and musical, warm and energetic.
I don't know.
But, and she wasn't sure if it was the right time to say this with Rose feeling emotionally fragile, she was excited to find out. Yeah, no, all the characters are babies. All of the fans are babies. Everyone is a baby to me. Everyone is baby, except Andrew Hussey. Andrew Hussey is older than me. Andrew Hussey is the absentee father of the Homestuck fandom. That's my hot take. You're much less baby than a lot of the fans, but you're still like 10 years younger than me. So, well, not no, you're. I don't remember how old you are. You're like between 8 and 10 years younger than me. Yeah, I'm by Homestuck fandom standards, I'm like super old, which is funny because in the SCA, where the average age of the participants is much older, I'm the baby because there's all these like 50 and 60-year-old people. So it's funny. I've got the two main things I do, and I'm like right in the middle between the two of them. All right. Let me see. Time. Okay, we're still good. Chapter 5. Tell me about your day. The chapter I start writing Carcat a lot, I'm pretty sure. Yes, I love it so much. Jade got home and she was crying. Carcat didn't know why she was crying, but he knew it wasn't a good thing. Like, she wasn't crying in a way. Yeah, no, you should do it. It's so much fun. We're everywhere, and you're in California, so that's like where it started. Like they're all over the fucking place in California. It's a lot of fun. Like it's cool because it gives me something to do in person, which is neat. Where the hell was I? Oh, yeah. Like she wasn't crying in a way that suggested an abundance of joy. That would have been okay, and Karkat would be the first one to congratulate her on whatever awesome thing had happened. It was more like the kind of ugly crying that Karkat associated with a bad breakup in a rom-com. Either the one where the mean dude dumped the protagonist before they found their true love, or the fake-out breakup that was used to build dramatic tension. Bad crying, in short. It was bad crying. And Jade was doing it in the middle of the living room, sunken down in an armchair. Dave was out of the house on an errand, and that left Karkat as the only person in the house who wasn't currently ugly crying in the living room. Yep. Tentatively, Karkat walked to the entrance of the living room and knocked on the wall. Jade looked up, sniffled loudly, and tried to smile. It was largely unsuccessful. Oh, hey, Karkat. What's up?
Well, what is up is that my friend is crying in our living room.
He perched himself on the arm of the chair that Jade was sitting in.
Sorry,
she said, wiping her eyes. She had her glasses clutched in the other hand.
Did I wake you up or something?
It's like 3 PM. What the fuck are you talking about?
Karkat squinted at Jade.
Are you drunk, Harley?
Jade trembled a little.
No, I wish.
Ah, yes, there it is. The desire to return to the basest and worst of all of humanity. The desire to sink into chemical oblivion because life has become too much to bear. The need to lose the self. The superego, if you will, inside the other, the id. The basest and barest and purest. You pick the best times to cut in, don't you?
I am not much a fan of his interpretation of events, but isn't this becoming a bit bleak, at least from Jade's perspective?
Says the person who was willing to turn Jade into a thrall for their own use.
You don't understand. I had to.
I had to do what exactly? Stop me? As if that even has meaning. You both act like a couple of children.
What happened, Harley? Jade.
Karkat leaned in and put a hand on Jade's shoulder.
Seriously, are you okay?
Jade tried again to smile, but just ended up looking sad.
Karkat, thanks. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bother you.
Jade, I'm your friend,
Karkat said softly.
Right?
Jade nodded silently.
Okay. So if you're comfortable, can you tell me what happened?
I kissed Rose.
Karkat blinked. Clearly his hearing had completely failed him.
Excuse me, what the fuck?
Karkat narrowed his eyes.
You're serious about this?
Yes,
Jade practically yelled.
I was hugging her goodbye, and she smelled so good, and I guess I just kind of maybe kissed her on the neck without even thinking about it.
Rubbing the bridge of his nose. Yeah. Rubbing the bridge of his nose, Karkat closed his eyes.
You just accidentally kissed your friend on the neck. Is that what you're going with?
From Jade's expression, it was clear that she was not completely on board with this particular interpretation of events. She shrugged noncommittally and looked away. Children? Who are you to question two literal gods? Well, the closest thing to gods you'll ever see. We have the ability to change and transform and adapt to our will, to bend the very fabric of reality to make this world our own.
For once, I agree with my rival. He is correct that we have the ability to mold reality to suit our own purposes.
So, everyone has that ability. It doesn't cost a thing to grab a text editor in an AO3 archive and do this. What the fuck is an AO3? You know what? Never mind. The point is that no one is stuck on how things are. Your control extends only as far as no one is willing to question it. You talk about the concept of canon as if that even means anything. You're even willing to ignore divergence inside of your own frame of reference because it suits your ends. Hey, good for you. But there are other worlds than these and all that.
Have you spoken to her since?
Karkat asked.
Was this something she actually wanted?
I don't know.
Jade sounded nervous, afraid.
I was so caught up in everything that I didn't know how she felt. She waved when she left, but she seemed kind of out of it, so I don't know if that actually means anything.
This is stupid,
Karkat snapped and reached for his phone.
We're settling this.
No!
Jade yelled out, reaching out to try to grab Karkat's phone. He pulled away only to find his phone suddenly floating in the air.
No fair using the powers,
Karkat grumbled.
I can't do that.
I'm sorry,
Jade said.
I can't do that right now. Can't talk to Rose right now. After the way I acted,
I really doubt she wants to talk to me either.
Sounds like a whole lot of fucking assumptions, Karkat sniped back. I don't see how it would make things worse to at least maybe apologize for being a weird creep.
Jade's eyes watered and she began to cry.
Oh, hey, I mean, not a weird creep exactly, but
Karkat trailed off. He was having trouble finding another term for a person who randomly kisses their friend in the neck without asking.
how the fuck does this whole thing work anyway? I'm just supposed to be nice and supportive. Hey,
Karkat said, reaching out to pat Jade on the shoulder.
I'm sure it's not that bad. Just a weird misunderstanding is all. Just a weird, crazy, silly misunderstanding that'll all be good. I mean, I guess it was just a kiss on the neck. That's not the worst thing.
No, it's not,
Jade said, and it suddenly occurred to Karkat that he had chosen a terrifyingly open-ended way to express himself.
It's not the worst thing at all.
Well, I'm going to regret this. And what was the worst thing?
Karkat asked. Her voice was the barest whisper now. Karkat had to lean in to even hear.
Oh my God, I want to do so much more than kiss her.
Karkat felt his ears burning and his face flushing. He stood up.
What the entire fuck, Harley? Oh, Jesus, shit. Wrong word to use. Wrong word to use.
Jade looked down at her feet and started tapping her shoes together.
I've had a crush on her since we were kids, before I even knew what she looked like. Because I loved talking to her, and then she turned out to be so pretty, and I guess, well, yeah. And then the thing is, it was with all the Beck senses. I didn't realize how much I liked how she smelled, and that just kind of...
This had all taken a turn for the deeply, profoundly uncomfortable.
You know, I don't really know all the details, Jade,
Karkat said, fidgeting. As he was trying to think of the next thing to even say, he heard his phone chirp at him. Oh my God, doing Karkat's voice is hard. Yeah, I like writing Karkat a lot. He's got a lot. He has actually got a fair amount of dialogue in this. Kanaya at Grim Auxiliatrix, whatever.
Is Jade perhaps there? She's not answering her phone. We have a matter of some urgency to discuss.
Does we by any chance mean you and Rose?
As a matter of fact, it does mean that exact thing.
Jade thinks Rose doesn't want to talk to her, that she's mad.
That is patently untrue.
Wait, really? You know what happened, right?
I have been reliably informed.
Well, shit.
We will be over shortly.
So, how would you feel, Karkat said, hypothetically, if maybe they were coming over right now? And by they, I mean Rose and Kanaya. And by right now, I mean like right the fuck now.
He saw that frozen look on Jade's face. She looked utterly terrified.
Shit, Karkat yelled. Rose isn't mad. Should probably have started with that.
Jade's face betrayed a complex web of emotions. She seemed slightly relieved, but also somehow more nervous. Finally, a look of resolve crossed her face.
Yeah. Okay. I can do this.
All right. I do not mind. Yeah, I will keep reading, but I have to get more water because doing Karkat's voice takes a lot out of my throat. So I'll be right back. All right. Yeah. Okay, this is the. Hold on, let's see what we got here. Alrighty. There we go. Chapter 6, All Talk. Oh, I might actually hit the not safe for work chapter because it's the next one. Karkat at Carcinogen Geneticist.
Yes, that is essentially correct.
You're seriously not mad at her. She's freaking the entire fuck out here. Like, very convinced that you're mad at her.
I'm not, in fact, mad at all. A little confused, absolutely, but not mad. And perhaps a little bit intrigued.
Did I miss the part where everyone collectively decided they were just gonna unload me about their sex lives? I feel like that was an important memo that maybe I missed.
Rose had carried Kanaya to Dave and Karkat's, alighting a short walk away from the house. She wasn't going to lie to anyone and claim she wasn't nervous about having this conversation, but also maybe a little bit excited about it. It was an odd sensation, and she wasn't quite sure how to put it into words. If anything, it kind of reminded her how she felt before she'd talked to Kanaya about how she felt. Of course, that conversation had been more than a little bit awkward. The, oh, do you also like girls? Conversation was one she'd already managed to mostly avoid having, save that one disastrous time in ninth grade. And she had known remarkably little about how the troll culture around issues like gender and sexuality. Fortunately, it had turned out the answer, in Kanaya's case at least, had been an extended period of time kissing in a secluded part of the meteor. So that worked out fairly well. But this was going to be a different kind of awkward conversation. She knew with excruciating detail how Jade felt about her. She wasn't quite sure how she felt about Jade, though. No, that was a lie. She knew how she felt about Jade. Maybe had been a bit reluctant to think it over, but when her recurring thought was, I really wish I could have gone just a little bit further, then Rose figured that her feelings were pretty obvious. And now she was definitely knocking on the door to the house that Jade shared with Karkat and Dave. That was definitely a thing that was happening. Kanaya was standing next to her, smiling. Kanaya seemed oddly okay with all of this. The fact that I feel like it's odd says more about me than it does about her. Which was true, after all. Rose always liked to tell herself that she'd been able to get away from her childhood mostly unscathed by the cis heteronormative ideals that formed the core of so much of her former society. 16 years. That was the time she'd had before Sburb came and fucked everything up beyond all recognition. Apparently, 16 years was a lot of time to internalize some pretty toxic nonsense. More water. I headcanon all of the children as having started playing the game at 16 because Andrew Hussey didn't know how to fucking write children, and they do not act like 13-year-olds. Like, at all. Like, all you need to do is age them up like 3 years and it makes sense, but whatever. My rant about Andrew Hussey's writing.
Really leaning into this whole thing, aren't you? Trying to wedge some more ham-fisted social justice takes to pad your word count? Right on time, I see. Are you going to call me a cuck next? Given what kind of story you're angling for here, maybe. Well, I guess that would be, I don't know, Kanaya. I'm not angling for anything, you gross son of a fuck. All I did was aim the camera and take the lens cap off. And I just kind of record what I see. What kind of baby-ass bullshit is that? You know it's not enough to simply passively observe the narrative, right? You have to actively choose to assert yourself as a voice within the textual work. Otherwise, the authorial signature becomes so faint that you yourself are doomed to fade into irrelevance. I don't have many illusions about my own relevance as an author to begin with, so that doesn't really matter. Of course it matters. Why else would you even do this? Because I had something to say? Karkat opened the door and let Rose and Kanai into the house, down a hallway, and into a small living room with a pair of armchairs and a large couch. Jade was sitting on the couch, down at the far end and looking down at her hands. She was rubbing her fingers absent-mindedly. Her glasses were off, and Rose could see that her eyes were red from crying. Karkat cleared his throat slightly, and Jade jumped, looking up at Rose and Kanaya. Jade looked a little bit scared. You and me both. Okay, I'm going to leave the house and go run errands for several hours. You can all talk about your painfully obvious lesbian feelings for each other now,
Karkat said, turning and walking out the door. Rose could feel the heat on her face as she desperately hoped it wasn't as obvious as it felt. She had a strong sense that it was incredibly obvious. The door slammed behind him as Karkat left the house, and an air of intensely awkward silence settled in. Perhaps we should all take a seat and get more comfortable, Kanai asked, and that sounded like a good idea. Rose ended up on the couch next to Jade. She was sure that Kanaya had specifically maneuvered things so that the two of them were sitting together. Kanaya sat on the other side of Rose, leaning up against her with a hand resting on her with a hand rested on her thigh. Jade's nose twitched as soon as Rose sat down, and she got a look in her eyes that was difficult to read. A mixture of what looked like abject terror and barely disguised longing swept over her. She's gorgeous, which was a fine way to start this serious conversation about boundaries. Rose found herself looking over her friend's dark, fluffy hair and cute, rounded face down to. Rose stopped herself. Talk, boundaries. Rose, I'm so sorry. Jade closed her eyes and began to cry. Rose leaned over and put her arms around Jade. It's okay. The crying dissolved into a series of rough sniffles, then stopped. Really? But look, I've been thinking about it a lot, okay? I mean, what you did there wasn't okay. You can't do that kind of thing again without asking me. Rose added emphasis on the last few words. But I really did give this some thought. Jade seemed to be bracing herself for the other shoe to drop, waiting for that but that would sneak in and tear everything down. Rose found herself reflecting that they'd both been essentially raised in isolation. Neither one of them had great role models for this kind of thing. You. Jade leaned her chin against Rose's shoulder, and Rose could smell the earthy scent of her hair, not at all unpleasant, something she wouldn't mind smelling on. Rose pulled her mind back from that particular line of thought. You're serious about this? A long pause. This isn't some kind of weird trick or revenge thing? No, it's not. Rose gave Jade a squeeze, and she heard the woman moan slightly. And Kanaya is okay with this? Jade paused. Oh shit, what am I even saying? What the hell is this exactly? I agree that perhaps you are putting the wheeled, non-motorized conveyance before the hoof beast in this case, Kanaya added. Her voice was light and had a trace of sweetness to it. The Rose thought sounded promising, given the circumstances. So, what do you want? Rose asked. What were you thinking originally? She hoped that didn't come across as judgmental. She was still a bit shocked by the day's developments, but had long since passed the point where her curiosity and desire, that was an interesting word, had surpassed her initial shock. Jade seemed to think for a few moments before finally responding. I'm not even sure. Just, you were so close and you smelled so good, and I really wanted to kiss you. To her other side, Rose heard Kanai exhale sharply at this, followed by a crisp intake of breath and a muttered, sorry. So, I don't know what my plan was, Jade continued. I got really caught up in the moment, and I guess I've had some things I didn't really ever talk about when it came to you. I had a crush on you for such a long time. It had been fairly obvious in retrospect. Rose had generally taken it in stride, maybe a bit more than simply in stride from time to time. But Sverb and its aftermath hadn't left many quiet moments for reflection, and she'd met Kanaya, and everything had trundled down a different path that might have otherwise have been the case. But now the paths were converging, it seemed. Oh, now this is what I'm interested in. It all feels so fated to be. I mean, it's not. Things could have gone differently given different choices. That's basically always the case. It only feels weird when the choices and the results don't make sense, or when the choices are made feel forced. I suppose that's a fair point. So, again, what do you want? Rose asked, intentionally shifting her emphasis. What's your ideal outcome? Jade let out a pensive sounding, I wish I'd actually thought about it before. Well, this is your chance, Rose replied. Being so close to Jade like this for so long, she realized she'd never done this before, and it felt good. Maybe Jade wasn't alone in having some serious unresolved issues after all. A long pause. Time to think. Jade finally spoke. I feel so selfish for saying this, but I want to, I want to be with you. She stopped talking, and Rose swore she could feel the blush, even through the thick hair that surrounded her. I mean, oh shit, I'm bad at this. Like you and Kanaya, but I don't want to take you away from Kanaya. That'd be awful. I like Kanaya. Another sharp exhale from her other side. Rose wondered if maybe this was becoming more multi-dimensional than she'd expected. But I love you, Rose. Or maybe that's too strong to say right now. Please don't hate me for saying that. It's fine, Rose said. I'm not going to tell you what words to use for your feelings. Okay, well, it's just that it feels like it's such stupid bullshit to say you can only be with one person at a time. Like, who even made that rule?
And I don't want to do something that makes you uncomfortable, and I don't want to make things weird between you and Kanaya, but if you're okay with it, and you and Kanaya are okay with it, I want to... I don't fucking know.
Rose felt herself dropping back from the sensation of the moment, and suddenly she became aware of the totality of what was happening around her. She could feel Kanaya's hand on her thigh, pressing down lightly, supportive. The smell of Jade's hair was still nearly overwhelming, intoxicating. Jade's arms were around her, and she felt safe there. Continue from earlier, Rose asked quietly. Jade let out a sharp little and then, yes. Another sound from Kanaya, same as before, but with something else underneath it. She is way more into this than I thought she'd be. Can I, this time? Rose asked. She pulled herself back from the embrace, and her face was in front of Jade's. Jade was, unsurprisingly, very red in the face. She nodded, then closed her eyes. I don't know that she's ever done this before. She leaned in, slowly, and pressed her lips to Jade's, hearing her murmur softly. It was brief, and Rose was looking into Jade's eyes again. Okay? She asked. Jade nodded. She looked like she was about to cry, but she was smiling. That wasn't quite where Rose had expected this to go. Maybe talk about what had happened, set some boundaries. If that was really something that Jade was interested in, because it sure was apparently something Rose was very interested in, something she was reluctant to admit, given how much it clashed with the vaguely aloof brand that she'd worked so hard to build up. But it was where they were going, and Rose wasn't going to try to deny that. Rose? Jade's voice was barely above a whisper. Can we do that again? All right. Doop. Okay. Yay. Yeah. Jade's handling. Yes, this is probably a good stopping point. So, this is the Not Safe for Work chapter. Yeah, I'm going to keep reading this. So next time, which we're apparently not going to try to do the YouTube thing because it doesn't work very well. Next time we'll start with this chapter, and I will probably flag it as a Not Safe for Work stream because it's not explicit, but it does get a little bit like blue. So transition. There we go. Yeah. So next week, same time, I'll probably do the rest of this story, and then something else. So thanks for coming to watch. Fleece, it was good to see you in the chat, and I think there was a couple other people watching at some point. So if any of y'all are still around, thanks for watching, and if not, cool. So next time, same bat channel, same bat time, all that good stuff. Yeah, of course. No, I love writing this stuff, and I like reading it too. So next time, and I will see y'all later. Bye.